Okay. So welcome everybody to the panel, and thank you all so much for joining us tonight. As people start to trickle in, I will just begin with a few housekeeping items. So to start, please know that we are indeed recording this panel. So if you're uncomfortable with having your face showing on camera, definitely just turn off your video. And also please note that we have closed captioning enabled, so you can enable a transcript if you'd like to read what people are saying. So my name is Rooksy, and I am a PhD student at Carleton University, and I helped put this event on behalf of Books to Prisoners Ottawa, and I'm joined here today with Jeffrey Bradley, who will be facilitating this discussion. Jeff, do you want to say a few words?
Sure, yeah. Hi, folks. I'm Jeff Bradley. I use the pronouns he, him. I'm doing my PhD in legal studies at Carleton, and I'm the other co-chair of Books to Prisoners, along with Jane, who's also on the panel today. So really happy to be here and having the privilege to facilitate this discussion with everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. So Books to Prisoners has been mentioned a bit. Books to Prisoners is a working group of OPIRG, so the Ontario Public Interest Research Group, both at Carleton University and the University of Ottawa. And while our mission is to engage in general advocacy, supporting prisoners' rights, our main focus is on sending donated reading materials and writing letters to people who are incarcerated. So we really focus on literacy, as well as connecting folks who are on the inside with resources and folks who are on the outside. So before we begin, I'd like to start off with a land acknowledgement. Of course, we are all online here tonight, but I'm coming to you from the traditional unsurrendered and unceded Algonquin territory, also known as Ottawa. And today we're going to be talking about prisons in Ontario, but also across Canada. So it's important to know that these were built on stolen land, and they are currently on the traditional territories of so many different nations. And so when we do this work, we have to highlight the connection between incarceration and colonization. As we know, for example, Indigenous women are the fastest growing prison population in Canada. So if you work in the realm of advocacy for people who are incarcerated, you must also be committed to Indigenous resistance as well. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. Many thanks to the Criminal Justice Community Grant from the Canadian Friends Service Committee for sponsoring this event. We are super grateful, thank you. And as everybody knows, tonight's topic is on food insecurity in Canadian prisons. So that includes the horrible quality, the lack of nutritious value, the small portions, and so on and so forth. And tonight we have 4 panelists who are joining us. They're going to engage in a conversation about the topic, and near the end we will take questions from folks. But our overall hope tonight is to take what we learn from these conversations and create a petition that we can circulate and use to advocate for better food conditions in Canadian prisons. And near the end, we are going to also do a draw for a $50 gift certificate for Octopus Books. So this is a local bookstore in Ottawa. Please stay tuned. And I'm going to jump right in and start introducing the wonderful panelists, starting with Ms. Farhat Rahman, who is a mother of 3 grown children and a grandmother of 1. Farhat is a co-founder of Mothers Offering Mutual Support, so MOMS, which was founded in 2010. MOMS is a support group for women who, like Farhat, have a son or a close relative in Canada's correctional systems. So Farhat has participated in advocacy efforts by speaking out about her experiences as a mother of a son suffering from mental health difficulties while being incarcerated. Farhat was also the president of the Canadian Council of Muslim Women in Ottawa from 1995 up until 2020. And in this role, she focused on advocating for women's equality, social justice, civic engagement, gender justice, and so on and so forth. Farhat has received several awards, including the Canadian Council of Women Women Who Inspire Award in 2016, the Governor General's Meritorious Service Award in 2017, and the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization's Community Service Award in 2019. Our next panelist is Vanessa. Vanessa is a mother of 4 daughters, a doula, a spoken word poet, as well as a community activist. Vanessa uses her insights with the correctional system to find her artistic voice, and oftentimes writing many of her spoken word pieces based on her experiences inside the institutions. Today, she uses her voice to advocate for those who are unable to speak for themselves. Our third panelist is Dr. Ivan Zinger, who is an adjunct professor at Carleton University. In 2004, he joined his current employer, the Office of the Correctional Investigator, so the Federal Prisoner Ombudsman. And as of 2017, he was appointed as the Correctional Investigator of Canada. Over the years, Dr. Zinger has developed expertise in domestic and international human rights law in prison settings. And he has written a number of academic publications that focus on a variety of subjects, including prison oversight, ethics, conditional release, segregation, the impact of tough on crime measures, and so on and so forth. And he is also the recipient of the 2014 Apex Partnership Award for making communities safer by building strong and effective partnerships across the country and abroad. And last but certainly not least, we have our 4th panelist, Jane Crosby, who has been co-chair of Books to Prisoners Ottawa since 2016. Currently, she is employed as a community reintegration worker in Ottawa. And before this, she's worked as a kitchen manager and cook for about 20 years, oftentimes in industrial kitchen settings. She graduated with a bachelor's in human rights and social justice in 2018 and is a mother of 2 children. And she began researching how food is produced and served in Ontario correctional centers back in 2014, especially through conversations with individuals who had lived experiences to share on the topic. So those are our wonderful 4 panelists. I'm going to hand it over to them. Perhaps they can begin by just saying a few words about themselves, their work, and what brings them to the topic of food insecurity in Canadian prisons. Perhaps starting with Farhat.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. So as Roxy told you, I'm part of the Mothers Offering Mutual Support, women's support group that was founded in 2010. So almost 11 years ago. And we started with 3 moms and a community member, and started to meet at the John Howard Society. And from that day onwards, we've been meeting once a month, first Thursday of every month. And so we have 3 primary objectives. So one is to support each other, because every meeting there will be invariably somebody new. And now that we've gone virtual, we have women joining us from other parts of the country as well. So we support each other, and to hear the story, and to when they find a supportive network of women, they're very gratified. And so we, the knowledge we've gained and the experience we share with them, and they're, they can move on from there. We also educate ourselves and collaborate with other organizations like CPEP, and we also belong to the Community Adult Justice Network, as well as the Correctional Reform Coalition, which is an Ontario-wide coalition. So having said that, I just wanted to also let you know that, yes, my son is a long time a prisoner in Canada's justice system, and he is currently at the Medium Security Bath Institute. And I also want to say that we continue to live with a criminal justice system that focuses on punishment of the incarcerated individual and under very harsh conditions of confinement that don't always meet the basic criteria of human rights. And so providing food to the prisoner, which is another basic necessity and a right, is another area which is fraught with machinations and maneuvers to cut costs and save provincial and federal correctional services budgets that favor security enforcement aspects of prisons, which means more ion scanners, if you may have heard recently in the Ontario government, more correctional officers to hire. But to improve the nutritional value of diets of prisoners does not figure highly on the priority list of the public and the decision makers alike. So, but we as family members, we care. So our activism and advocacy was accelerated. We formed an advocacy group within our moms group because we have over 65 members currently. So we formed an advocacy group, which currently is at 6 members. So we became aware of the appalling conditions at the Ottawa jail late in 2015, when there was a huge media coverage and exposition and a hunger strike by the prisoners. So we saw this a cynical and inaccurate piece of written in the Ottawa Sun, which though belongs to those who think the system is coddling the criminals. So it had a very cynical tone to it, typical of that kind of magazine. And so the hunger strike by prisoners was derided in the article. And so we teamed up with group, the CPEP, Criminalization and Punishment Education Project. And our spokesperson, Irene, gave interviews to the Ottawa Citizen and the CBC Radio all in a day. And the focus was on the appalling state of the food that was being fed. And we also had a discussion with the OCDC superintendent. It was a woman superintendent, and she agreed with us that things need to change. And if you remember, there used to be a community advisory board, now dismantled by the Ford government, and they were a good oversight group that would, bring out, and they too wrote a report about the appalling food that was being served. So that's where we, started our advocacy. And in 2016, CPEP and moms collaborated on a forum on conditions at the OCDC. And we had a joint release with 6 issues that were highlighted, and food figured prominently. So things did seem to improve after, the last government that was in power. We worked closely with them, and there were some changes made, but it seems things have again fallen below the acceptable level. And we also had the same kind of meetings with the senior advisors with the newly formed government at the time, and in 2015. And we had expressed our concerns about the quality and quantity of food. So that is where our activism on this topic lies, and we continue to keep abreast of things that are happening. And currently OCDC again is an issue and in the news. So I'll stop there and I'll let others give your version. Who's next?
Thank you so much, Farhat. Roxy, who we turn to next?
Vanessa, would you like to go?
Sure. My name's Vanessa. I'm here to speak about my lived experience with the being at OCDC and several other places, but OCDC has definitely been the worst. I started getting involved in sort of like advocating when I started, when I joined CPEP, and I first heard of CPEP because I had to contact them for myself for the things that I was going through when I was incarcerated at OCDC. And since then, I've been an active member, and any chance I get, I take the opportunity to create awareness so that people could know like what's going on in there and the condition, the horrendous conditions, and the way people are being treated, and just all that stuff. So yeah, I don't have much to say about that. Just that, yeah, I'm here to speak about that stuff. Next person.
Thanks, Vanessa. It's so important to hear the lived experience. So I really appreciate that. We're going to turn it over now to Ivan.
Well, again, thank you for this kind invitation. I'm just amazed and really find it exceptionally rewarding that we have quite a large audience. So this is great that there's interest in the community for these kinds of issues. I'm Ivan Zinger. I've been the correctional investigator for over 5 years. Just to give you an overview of what my office does. We're a small office, about 40 employees, and we have a legal mandate to investigate complaints from federal prisoners or those individuals that are serving the remaining of their sentences in the community, so people on parole. So we have jurisdiction over these individuals as well. And it's purely federal. And as a proper ombuds, I have a great, myself and my investigators have a great deal of legal authority. We can enter any penitentiary at any time. We can have access to any documentation that in the course of one of our investigation. And we can do all sorts of things, like we even have powers to subpoena, to make people testify under oath, or to even hold public hearings. But these extraordinary powers, we don't need to use them because we have collaboration from Correctional Service of Canada. With respect to food, this, I think food was not much of an issue up until at the federal level, that under the Harper government, that the system was so-called modernized, and a new system was put in place. And then we saw a big surge of complaints, and the food, as I'm talking today, is at the federal level is below standards. And I don't want to take too much time just to introduce the topic, because I would like to, if I'm giving the opportunity, to show a few photographs that during my visit to penitentiary, either myself or my investigators have taken pictures of food-related issues. So we do a lot of systemic work, and food is certainly something that we have invested a lot of time. And I'd like to raise a whole bunch of different issues. And if there is interest for me to expand on any of those topics, I'll be more than happy to do so. So I'll leave it to that as an introductory remarks.
Thanks, Ivan. So maybe we'll let Jane introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Jane Crosby. I don't know how I start. I've had my life involved with prisons. My father was a chaplain, so I grew up in prisons. I grew up in Spring Hill Penitentiary, going there every week. And I can remember my dad liking the steak in the cafeteria because the food wasn't bad, right? And so food was never an issue, like in my circle of understanding of prisons and jails and stuff. So then the end of the 90s, I moved away for 11 years. And my friends that go to prisons and my family, they never complain about the food. But then when I went away for 11 years, I come back to Ottawa and I'm going to Carleton in my human rights degree. And I'm hearing all these complaints about the food. And so I didn't understand. So I started researching it. And it was when like Mr. Zinger pointed out, it was when the Adult Infrastructure Renewal Program was introduced in '98 by the Harper government. And then the food cook and chill thing was very difficult to hear me. Sorry, I'm talking too fast. So yeah, it's a big process. And I've spent years researching it, because I am a cook, so I understand the system. And I have very simple solutions of advocacy ways we can just kind of get to the point of raising the standard up to an acceptable standard and then work on it from there. So that's what I hope this talk will be, you'll get out of this talk. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. That's so important about that like standard of like food and how it's yeah, it's just so terrible in quality and in quantity and how it's being served. So hopefully we can get into that. So maybe it actually is a good segue into our first part about sort of the context of food insecurity in Canadian prisons. So anybody's welcome to jump in on this to answer this, but sort of the first question I was thinking to start us off was around like, what does the food situation look like in Canadian prisons? And I think folks have already started talking about you know, the poor quality of it and maybe what it looks like. So Ivan, I don't know, maybe you want to show your slides now, so maybe we could see like what an image actually looks like of some of this food, and it'll probably spur some conversation around you know, just how bad the food is and what it looks like, and seeing that visual you know, for us to understand that, but also hearing some of the lived experience here tonight about people that have actually ate that food and been sick from that food. So I don't know, Ivan, you want to go ahead?
Yes, so here's, I'm just trying to figure out the, how I can, I think this is the one. There you go. So can you see these pictures here?
Yeah, we can see them clearly.
Okay, great. So let me just start with giving just a very brief sort of context. You know, over 25 years ago, when I started my career and I used to visit penitentiaries, this was at the tail end when employee of the Correctional Service of Canada were actually fed by inmates. There was correctional officer. This was one of the perks of working in a penitentiary, is that you would have meals included in your day, and it was prepared by incarcerated individuals. We've moved a lot over that 25, 30 years. We moved a lot away from that. And I think for me, I guess in terms of timing, as you know, around 2008, we had an economic crisis, and the Harper government initiated an attempt to sort of recuperate funds from the government by cutting the size of budgets of various departments. So this was called the Deficit Reduction Action Plan, and departments were asked to make a contribution. And what happened is, in corrections, they decided to put food as an attempt to reduce the cost. And now the cost is less than $6 per prisoners per day. So this is how much corrections spends on food, less than $6 per day, which is extraordinary low amount. So what they did is that they spend millions of dollars modernizing certain kitchens and centralized kitchens with a process called cook chill. And those centralized modern kitchen would then deliver the food to various penitentiaries in nearby locations. So here's what it currently looks like, and these are pictures that I've taken or my investigators have taken of various food trays. So you've got a little sense of what it looked like. The bottom right is actually a vegan meal. So just for those who do not eat meat. The breakfast seems to be probably the best. The best. So here's 4 food tray. Here's another four different food trays. I'll point to the one on the top left because this is the problem. This is the real cook chill. Everything is put in a vat and boiled for an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then eventually bagged and refrigerated and kept until it's delivered to different penitentiaries. So another issue that is interesting is because in penitentiaries, incarcerated individuals eat really early supper. So sometime around 4:30 or 5, they have their meals, and they won't have another meal until the breakfast the next day. And based on human rights standards, you can't not provide any food for if it's going to exceed 10 to 12 hours. So correction does offer some snacks. You have a peanut butter and jam there that is brought into the units to cover that period. So the cook chill, here's how it works. So these are the expensive kitchen that they have put throughout the country. You have on the left these big vats right here. And at the bottom of the vat, you've got a tube. So all the ingredients are measured, pre-measured, scanned with codes. Everything is dumped into that meat and all the ingredients, whether it's fish, chicken, pork, or chicken or whatever. It's all put in there. And then it's boiled between an hour and a half or 2 hours. Then it comes out of a tube, and then it's put into plastic bags. And those plastic bags are then dumped into this container on the right, which is filled with hot water. And then the water is cooled down to around 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. And then those bags are then retrieved. Here's an example of a bag, and put into these containers, those blue containers. And then from there, so this is almost frozen. Within a couple of weeks, they are transferred to the institution. So I was in mission about 3 weeks ago. These are example of those bags. And then those bags at the local institutions are then on your left. Those machines are designed to reheat those bags, and then they're put on trays. The trays, the hot trays, are put into those carts on the right, and then brought to the units. And because of COVID, there's no longer any access to communal dining. Everything is delivered on unit, and depending on the unit, most in a higher security, they tend to eat in their cells or on the range in the unit. So one of the issues that we've seen is that historically, prior to cook chill, the canteens had only stock up things like chips and chocolate bars and pop. That was typically what was available. But what we've seen over the years with the bringing of cook chill into penitentiaries, we've seen that the canteen now look like a small IGA. So the very low inmate pay, and let me tell you, in the federal system, inmate pay was set at $6.90 in 1981, so over 40 years ago, and it hasn't been changed, indexed, or increased ever since. And on the contrary, that additional charges were taken away from that daily pay, and only very few inmates actually managed to get the full $6.90. So you can see that they spend the very little resource they have to complement their diets, because otherwise they go hungry, or the food is so bad that they're they just you know, just can't eat it. We see that there's lots of protein that you can get in those canteen now. So none of these items existed before the modernization initiative that was brought in by the Harper government. In extreme cases, food is so problematic because obviously there's bullying of more vulnerable incarcerated individuals, that so that they are they can be bullied out of their canteen or food. So food has become a legitimate commodity that is now traded and can prompt violence. The case can, in extreme situation, we actually saw a riot, which there wasn't any riot for the previous 20 years. So this happened in 2016 at Saskatchewan penitentiaries. This is after the riot that caused for more than $3 million of damages, and there was loss of life as well. And these were traced from the investigation that we conducted to the poor quality of food and quantity of food, and the tension that happened in the kitchen at Saskatchewan Penitentiary. So just to, you know, I don't want to make, I want to make sure that I don't leave you with in complete negative. So there are exceptions with respect to food, and some good food is being provided. I think the best example I have is actually at Port-Cartier in Quebec, which is a maximum security near Sept-Îles, in a very remote area, where food is actually more expensive because it is remote. But the penitentiary over there decided to, in order to maximize the allocation of funds, to design a program that would teach incarcerated individuals how to bake bread, and they make bagel muffins, and they're not under the cook chill, but they're under the national menu, which is also problematic. And on the left side, you can see this is Maison Décision, Crossroad Halfway House in Quebec, which they have exceptionally good food, and nobody complains about the food. And they also have very low budget, but they're able to cook excellent food. Port-Cartier is, if you actually speak to incarcerated individuals there, some individuals do not want to transfer down security because they're fearful that they will end up in a penitentiary where the food is lousy. So I'll leave my remarks to this. If there's any questions later on, I'm happy to cover that. So I apologize for the time I've taken.
No, thank you very much. That context and the photos really speak volumes. I just wanted to say too that like we are speaking about, we have people here that have had experiences in provincial institutions. So like anybody 2 years less a day. So I don't know, Vanessa, maybe do you want to speak a little bit about like what the food is like, you know, at a facility like OCDC that we've just heard, you know, the terrible conditions there, and, you know, people basically starving. I don't know, can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so the food at OCDC definitely doesn't even look as nice as those pictures, believe it or not. There were many times that the food was unrecognizable. It just looked like slop. Like you didn't even know, if there wasn't a label on it, you wouldn't know what it was. For myself, I've been a vegetarian for about 20 years. And I had a lot of issues at OCDC with my diet because they just refused to accommodate. They would bring me meat and tell me, oh, it's not meat, it's tofu, just eat it. I've made complaints, and then I've been threatened to be transferred or threatened to not get my 2/3 and serve my entire sentence because I'm complaining about the food. There has been 2 occasions where I was incarcerated while pregnant, and the diet was making me so sick that they would give me like rice cakes or those little peanut butter and jam packets. So I would often like kind of hoard them or trade people for theirs, so that I would have, like, that's all I was living off. I would eat peanut butter out of the little packets, like those Jiffy packs, with a spoon. And then when we'd have a search, they would take them all. So then if we happened to have a search, then I would just be starving. And I remember there was one time when I was pregnant and they brought me a meal that was like beef. And I told them, I'm not eating this. This is beef. And she's like, no, it's not. It's tofu. Just eat it. But I'm like, the label literally says beef. So she brought me 2 packs of crackers, like the little packs of 2 crackers, and 2 packs of jam, and said, here, don't expect this every night, as if that was like some kind of privilege to eat 2 packs of crackers and 2 packs of jam for supper. And it's true, we usually have supper really early, like 4:30, but we don't have snack at the end. So you end up not eating until the next morning, like 7:30, whenever breakfast comes. The canteen, as far as I know it, at OCDC, is still just chips and chocolate bars and stuff like that. Not even pop. There's just chips and chocolate bars, and there's not really anything that you could use as like a meal replacement or to supplement the poor diet. And just there's times that I've been there and just gotten extremely sick because of the amount of soy they put in the vegetarian diet. It's like almost every meal. And I'm trying to like explain to them, this is too much soy for for one human being to consume. And it's not healthy. And, when you try to speak up, you usually get threatened or punished or get privileges taken away. So at one point I ended up losing 40 pounds in maybe like 2 months, and I didn't need to lose 40 pounds. So when I got transferred somewhere else, I didn't even realize I lost that much weight, because the mirrors in OCDC look like distorted funhouse mirrors, so you can't really see yourself. And we're wearing the same like jogging suit clothes, whatever. So I didn't realize until I put my clothes on that I had gotten arrested with how much weight I lost. And I was anemic all of a sudden, which I've never been in my life. I was fainting all the time and just started to have all these health problems because of the diet. And then it's also like for myself anyway, I would become obsessed with food. Like every commercial I noticed, no matter what the commercial was about, had food in it. I would like cut out or rip out things. I didn't have scissors. Rip out little images of magazines and of food, and I would like have a whole, like, I would be like fantasizing about what I'm gonna eat when I go home. Like I would just start obsessing over it because I was starving and so getting so sick from the food and just sick of being hungry all the time that it literally became, an obsession. And yeah, like often stuff was spoiled, like visible mold on it. There's times that they brought in the bread to us where there was like bite marks in the bag because there was obviously mice, and they refused to replace it. Sometimes the food was still cold, like frozen in the middle. And yeah, like everything just looked like slop.
Disgusting.
Yeah, like I said, those pictures he showed it were at least like, it was recognizable. The stuff we got at OCDC wasn't even recognizable. It, like, you had no idea what you're eating. Even like they would bring ham and potatoes and say it's halal ham. What that doesn't even make sense. Like pork is not halal. So yeah, stuff like that. It was just very disrespectful to people's culture. there were, you know, one of the times that I complained with another woman I was incarcerated with who was Indian, and the warden at the time, Maureen Richardson, told us, "Oh, you people always complaining about everything." And she maybe like 20 times during the conversation, she referred to us as you people and said, "Oh, you know, you people, and you're vegetarians because of your religion, but I'm not a vegetarian because of my religion." And you know, things like that. Like, it was very disrespectful, very ignorant. And then, yeah, like, she also threatened to have me transferred and have me serve my full sentence because I wanted to eat real food. So I don't know if anyone wants to add to that.
Yeah, that's just disgusting that like these are the conditions that people are having to live under. I'm so sorry you had to deal with that. Jane, can you speak a little bit about, I know you've had a number of loved ones that and friends and stuff that had spent time at OCDC. Can you kind of speak to a bit of like what the diet was like? Because I believe from some of your research, you did some comparisons to you know, the Canada Food Guide and what's being served in the institution.
Sure. I had someone I know was an OCDC, and he was in solitary for the whole 9 months he was there. So and he would call me because he had no one else to call, right? So I started recording his food. I was like, "What'd you eat today? What'd you eat today? And so I followed his menu, his diet for like weeks and weeks, right? And what I noticed was, one thing about the cook and chill food system was at the separation between prisons, federal prisons, and provincial jails, is the federal prisons have the cook and chill in the bags to go to the places, and they put them on the trays, right? And in the jails, they're all made at one central location, and it's put on trays, and the trays are sent out on to be reheated in those machines. Now those trays, when the food is put on those trays, it's only supposed to be sitting in the refrigeration for a 5-day window period, right? So when I was listening to the way the food was coming out, and it's just they're sitting too long. Like the food's not being used in this 5-day cycle. It's not being ordered right. Like something in the cycle isn't going right. And also, the cook and chill is used in hospitals, and hospital food is bad, right? Nobody likes hospital, but it's not disgusting. It's not mushy. It's not moldy. It's not, never comes like that, right? But they've taken out the food quality control in corrections of the delivering the food system. That's really lacking, which is why the food's coming so standardly. So if we could just raise the standard of food being served in provincial jails up to a hospital, which is the difference in the bag. The hospitals use a simplicity bag system that obviously stops cooking when it reaches 120-degree internal temperature, 120 degrees. And obviously jails don't have that because food's coming overcooked and so sorry, what was your question? But yeah, like
you're speaking to like just the way that like prisons are like basically taking a cheaper route to like do this form of cook and chill, and you're talking about the standard being raised as like as a way to like get it to a certain point. But also I know you've talked a lot about bringing fresh foods, you know, like healthy, nutritious stuff and like culturally appropriate food in, which, you know, you can't do in even simplicity.
Sorry. So yes, so my friend that I was following his diet in solitaire, he was getting served at OCDC. They're getting beef stew for lunch and chicken stew for supper, and they're getting cabbage rolls 3 days in a row. And they were like never having eggs. They're supposed to get eggs once a week on Sundays. They never had fresh fruit. The only fruit they have is they get oranges and bananas, or apples and bananas. There's the only choice of fresh vegetables and fruit. And the way you can tell the difference between a provincial tray of food and a federal tray of food is a federal tray of food will have fresh vegetables on it. Provincials never have fresh vegetables. Everything's mushed. Everything's cooked to mush because it's just easier. It's faster to do. And and so what it is, it's the handling system. Is how long does it take on the truck to reach the institutions? Who's rotating the cooking stuff in the fridges? Like the questions that need to be asked that aren't being asked are, to me, very simple questions on how to run a kitchen, you know, how to bring it up to standards, you know, and nobody's in the kitchens in the provincial jails to bring it up to standards. It looks like provincial jails don't even have a tray of evening snack, like Vanessa said. So we need to bring the evening snack of fruit and vegetables like they have at federal when the field service has stopped, so they don't have any staff.
Right.
Yeah.
Bringing that back. And then like, even I think we've had conversations in the CPEP and Books to Prisoners and other groups about like, there's garden programs like even across the road at Just Foods Farm, and like, why can't we bring in food, healthy food? And the prison administration constantly puts roadblocks in place because they want to treat them as subhuman, and it's just disgusting.
Yeah. And the thing is, when you're incarcerated, all you lose is your liberty rights. You don't lose any other Canadian citizenship rights. You still have a right to be fed. You're under state care. You need to be nutritionally fed and adequately looked after. You shouldn't have to be put in this violent, nasty, angry, oppressive situation. And then to be hungry while you're going through that, because it's a very traumatic experience to go to jail or go to prison. You're already traumatized by whatever it is you're going through. To only be starved, that just like, yeah, we're wondering why there are issues. So if we just start with the food, that can help a little bit.
Yeah, maybe Farhat, I know we're kind of jumping around from provincial, but maybe just to go back to like federal, can you sort of speak to like your son's experience or any of those others that the moms group deals with, like around food, either at OCDC or at the federal level? Like what are the things that you're hearing when it comes to like the situation?
Okay, thanks. Well, when I was coming to this panel, I wanted to have hear from moms whose sons are in the provincial, and some of them did get back to me. But for overall, it seems to me that the menus are very calorie high, and those are mainly proportions of the starches like breads and pancakes, crackers, and cereals. So, for considering the population, the consumers who are physically confined, these amount of starchy carbohydrates are clearly excessive, obviously, and not geared to their lives and their realities. So, but again, we have this stigma, of demanding something more for prisoners is like asking, to be soft on crime and coddling the criminal and that kind of mentality. But hopefully with enough advocacy, we can move beyond it. But what I heard from the provincial and particularly OCDCs was that the vegetables are mostly overcooked and mushy, or maybe cold and uncooked. And sometimes the food is so bad, they wouldn't know exactly what it was that they were eating. He got food poisoning a number of times, one mom said. And when that happened, what did they do? They locked him up in their cells. So the fruit, it doesn't look fresh. And this is too much ground food, ground beef is processed into either the Salisbury steaks and mashed potatoes. These are the givens and the regular meals. And sandwiches, whenever they get sandwiches, they used to have a choice of putting on the condiments with whatever they like, but now they come pre-seasoned with the mustard or mayonnaise. So sorry if you don't like them, but here you are, you're going to get that. And the hot and cold breakfast, they only get 3 hot breakfasts. And the guys would really like to, in the morning you feel like having a hot breakfast, but they don't get that. In short, there is no thought given to nutrition and variety, but kept to the punitive standards of corrections.
Yeah, I guess this really speaks to like the dehumanization of people that are in prison, and like, Ivan and Jane discussed, and I think Vanessa as well, about like the cuts to funding, and often, conservative governments use austerity measures, and the first thing to cut is like prisoners' well-being, or like prisoner programming, or quality of food, or finding the cheapest ways. And it's it's not right, especially like if, you know, people are supposed to be cared by the state, which obviously they're not from these institutions, because we know of all the multiple other issues that are wrong with prisons and criminalization. But I guess this kind of opens us up to this sort of like second part where we're talking about like the impacts of this, you know, inadequate, insecure food on people. So I think Farhat, you were getting to some of the like physical impacts and like the mental and
Exactly.
physical.
Yeah. Well, you know, I would also add to this first part is that sometimes the food handling of the food. You know, we had a focus group last January to look at other things and ask the moms what they thought, but some of them said that their sons distrusted the food that was served to them. And if a certain guard who didn't like them was on duty, they didn't eat that time, the food that were served. And so they would refuse the food. And one mom reports that her son told her the food had been tampered with. He did not eat anything sauce or soup based, basically anything that was sauce or soup based, he didn't. But the impact of the inadequate food is, I worry about that all the time. And my conversations with my son, you know, whenever he calls, the focus is so much on, so what was for dinner today or something. These days he's fasting. So he has to collect his breakfast and keep it in the fridge with his name mark. Then he collects his lunch and keeps it in the fridge with his name on it. And the same for dinner. So then he eats after sunset and then saves some to eat in the morning before sunrise. That's the fasting ritual that he observes. And he seems to be getting a good variety of the meat and the other foods. And today he had a bit of fruit as well. So he, you know, sort of splits it and balances it that way. But there is very little choice in the drinks, you know, and I encourage him to drink water. You know, my son is over 50 years old, and these are the conversations I have. Oh, don't drink cola, drink water, you know, because I'm worried for his health, because we have you know, illnesses such as diabetes in the family. So it's a fair, you know, kind of precaution to take. So the weight gain is another, you know, the medication that they have him on, he attributes that to the weight gain, but the starches again, and the hydrogenated fats and sugar. And when he caught COVID in March, and the first few days were so stressful and worrisome, and I kept asking him if he had any vitamins on himself, if you have any herbal teas, but of course he didn't have any of those. Oh, he did have some vitamins, he said. So I said to him, take those. And then for herbal teas, this was a solution. You know, he has a habit of saving the peels from the oranges. I found that out. And my daughter told him, you know, take some very hot water and soak those orange peels in it and drink that. So that's what he did. And that really helped him. So these are the, you know, the innovative things that they have to do too. But of course, there would be nothing he wouldn't like, because he had COVID, he was isolated, he was in medical isolation, and that was particularly very difficult time, because he couldn't go into the kitchen to warm himself some hot water for drinks like that. So it was quite, you know, unsettling time, but thankfully he's over it. And so he manages well with what he has. And so that's all that I have from his side. But, you know, another issue for me is because diet is so important in, you know, addressing if you have any kind of mental health issues, and very recent studies and surveys of people living in poverty during the pandemic showed that the level of anxiety increased by 257%. And this is, I got that off of the Statistics Canada website. And they said a growing number of studies have also documented links between food insecurity and adverse mental health outcomes, such as higher rates of depression, stress and anxiety, and poor self-perceived mental psychological health. So this is so important. Diet is so important in addressing issues of mental health as well as other health challenges. And, so it is a concern.
I guess maybe I'll open this up, a question for anyone who wants to jump in on this one, but like seeing that connection between when someone is like unhealthy and not getting, the proper nutrition, which then impacts not only your physical health, but your mental health. And then, this leading to things like riots. Ivan showed some pictures of Saskpen where like prisoners are having to resist with their bodies because of the failures of our prison and penitentiary systems. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to like, how do we like prevent, prisons are going to continue to be violent, and like maybe a way that might, reduce some of that tension is like actually giving healthy foods as sort of like a basic necessity and a basic right for people that are incarcerated. I don't know if anybody wants to talk a bit about that.
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I feel like when we're being fed stuff that doesn't even look like food, you don't feel like a human being. You feel like a farm animal. And, like the conditions are more or less the Humane Society for your stray dogs that were on the street. And of course that affects your mental health. And then in combination with the treatment you get from the staff, from the dirty living conditions, from the lack of programming, from the lack of yard, and all that stuff really weighs up on you. And if you go in there already depressed, for sure, you're just becoming more depressed. If you're criminalized for being poor, then it's like, how is that helping anyone when you're starving, you're wearing dirty clothes and sleeping on the floor? That's not helping anything. If you go in there and, you're criminalized for having addictions issues and you gain 100 pounds from eating bread all day long because nothing else is edible, then when you're released, a lot of people fall back into the cycle of drugs because they want to lose that weight, because that's on your self-esteem and that's on your, like, nobody feels good about that. When you're getting released and your clothes don't even fit you anymore, or like me, I'm getting released and my clothes are falling off because I just refuse to eat. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good, like, to be fainting everywhere. I was in there with someone who I still speak to, who ended up going into diabetic shock because they were drinking juice and eating bread all the time, taking people's extra desserts because it's like, there's nothing else to do in there. And when this person went into diabetic shock, I was banging on the door, like blood was pouring out of their mouth. They were like on the floor, like hallucinating. And the first thing the guards said was, "Oh, what drugs did you take?" And then started accusing all of us of giving this person drugs. And I know they ended up being in a coma for like 11 days. Their blood sugar was like 50 something. So it's like, when you're physically getting sick from the food and from the conditions in there, they're still finding a way to blame it on you. It's your fault. You probably took some drugs, or it's not the system. It's not the jail. It's not us. It's your fault. So yeah, all that takes a toll on you. And, it's no wonder there's violence of that. Just hearing that, just reliving it in my head is making me angry right now. So I can't imagine like being there for like a really long period of time. So there, yeah, like that, you can't expect anyone to be happy and joyful and compliant when this is how they have you living. Like they're not even treating people like they're adults more, or human beings. So you're going to behave according to the way you're treated.
Yeah, exactly. And then like when it's kind of getting to that, like where like there's insufficient nutrition, you're also not feeling good at all. You're being treated as like not, subhuman. And then you're expected to be, able to integrate back into the community. And there's nothing, there's not enough integration supports as is. So like coming back, like you're saying, with self-esteem issues because you've gained all this weight, or you're starving, and then to come back out. And we know so many people that live in poverty as well rely on food banks that don't give healthy foods either. It's like canned food, boxed Kraft Dinner and Mr. Noodles that are, not healthy to any sense of the word. Jane, maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the impacts of horrible quality food and people coming out of prison? And it's probably speaking to some of that. You may see it in the halfway house for people coming out of the federal pen, or some of your knowledge from provincial.
Food security is a big thing. Like people need to be secure to know they're going to eat something good, and like just the complaints and just the people, the hunger, the repeated people just talking about the hunger they experience and the hunger, and there's no need for that, right? And then, but I found that really, like, it was interesting when the picture with the eating well and the good food, because I understand at Pittsburgh, is it Pittsburgh or Joyceville, they offer cooking. They offer a cooking program, and I find that really kind of off balance. Like, how could you offer people to cook nice food, but the baking bread, maybe that's what he's talking about. But they know how to cook because they have a better canteen. But jails don't have that luxury. Like in '98, I know in 2002, there was a hunger strike at OCDC my friend was involved in when they introduced the cook and chill to protest the cook and chill diets. And they lived off the food in the canteen, because the canteens were well stocked because they were stocked by the state. They were all stocked by then. So for 30 days, they didn't need anything from the kitchens. And was it Harper? No, was he provincial? Harper? No, Harper was federal, right? So the government, Harris government, the way he answered it was he privatized the canteens. They didn't offer any more vegetable selections. And he got rid of evening snack in the jails. So we have to bring those back. And it was just kind of squashed. Like the hunger strike, the issue was never brought, the food was never brought back up to standards. Nobody ever talked about it again. And same with this hunger strike they just had in 2015. It was just squashed, and the food hasn't improved, and nobody's really worried about it anymore. And so what are we telling, like the value, people's value? They're trying to speak out, take the liberty right, and do a peaceful presentation, hunger strike, and say they object to something, and they're just being quashed and not being served anything better. So I think we as citizens, we need to say enough is enough, and we need to stand up and go back and do some kind of real serious advocacy with specific things. Like I keep on saying, if we could just raise the standard of food in the cook and chill, to use the bag system that they use in the hospitals, that would improve. Like, who's letting bad food come out of the kitchens? Who's letting bad food out the trucks? Who's out working with the food in the fridges, right? So if we just start there with food quality, somehow I get some answer, get some. It's going to take work, but it's a doable situation. Is what I'm saying. Instead of just telling them to do it, I think we need to set up some rules and say, we want to see this done, this done, this done. Like, how is the food, tracking the food system, and how much they order? Do they order weekly? Do they order monthly? Do they order, do you know what I mean? Does it come in every day, the orders? But questions like this, we're not asking, and we're not getting answers. And if we start, calling them on stuff and making them accountable, hopefully the food will raise a little bit until we can get it figured out for the short term.
Yeah, and I guess what about like the, you know, these industrial kitchens that were, you know, put in, and, you know, all this privatization stuff, especially with conservative governments. I think you mentioned Harris, where, you know, they were actually making food, and like this was, so I think I saw someone in the chat talking about how like cook and chill took away employment for
Very
prisoners.
much so. Very much so, very much so. But the thing is, the cook and chill was a huge investment, and they're not going to go back, right? They're not going to go back and switch and put old kitchens back in. They're not doing that. Some places have kitchens, and it's okay. Like I know Quinty, the institution, the provincial institution in Quinty, they have their own cook. They don't use quick and chill, and I don't understand why that is. And I'm sure there are a few other places in Ontario that I'm not aware of that don't use cook and chill, but right. So if they just, what am I saying? Yeah, but it's how they're hiring people for the cook and like to do. They hire one regular cook. How are they trained? How do they train the staff? Who's making the bad trays? The trays are taken by a range, someone from the range. So they're taking bad food out of the kitchen. Who's taking bad food out of the fridge and put in the heat? Like it's a very simple. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we have these institutional things. We have to work with what we got, is what I'm trying to say. So if we could introduce an evening snack, get more fruits and vegetables in their local produce, right? So like that, get more control in the kitchen, have more control over what kind of food, how often they're buying it, how often the trays are getting recycled, you know? It's workable for what we have.
Yeah, I remember just one thing, and then maybe I'll open it up to the panelists if they want to have any closing remarks, and then we can go into Q&A. But when I was volunteering at Millhaven, you know, and Jane, I think I don't know if we were volunteering with the Millhaven Lifers Liaison Group, and we were taken into this huge industrial kitchen. So you have like Millhaven, it's maximum, like, you know, conditions are terrible there. They basically had a solitary confinement there that was just disgusting. Like I remember there was it was like you know, big doors. Anyways, it was just, there was no windows. Anyways, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but they took us to this kitchen that they had built in the institution, and it was like state of the art, like new.
Yeah.
And it was like they were only using a little section of this huge kitchen because it was all cook and chill.
Yeah. Yeah. But
so
the,
that
and
was-
the equipment, the thing is, in the kitchens, all the equipment's spotless. They have all the records and all the accountability for the cleanliness of the equipment and the working of the equipment, but nothing about the food quality control. Do you know what I mean? Nothing about temperatures, taken in the fridges, or how the inventory is recycled, or do you know what I mean? I can't find any research on that, right? Which is really interesting to me. So it's like they either don't have it, or because all they seem to care, as long as the machine's working well, we're doing our best, we're doing our part, right? Because it's the easiest thing to manage is a machine. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So they're just doing the easiest thing, most cost effective with the food.
Farhat, did you want to go with some concluding remarks, and then maybe we'll go around to Ivan, Vanessa, and then Jane just to close it off, and then we can open up for question and answers.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say that, you know, I think it was between 2013 and 2014, when Harper's government initiated the closure of the on-site kitchens. So there were 4 kitchens closed off in BC. I'm sure others across Ontario as well. So one of the moms told me that her son was at Frontenac, which is now called Collins Bay Minimum. And at that time, the institution had its own kitchen, and meals were planned and prepared by the inmates under the supervision of a chef. And according to him, the meals were tasty, adequate, and quantity for a young man. He was in his 20s then. For the first part of his incarceration, he had also access to fresh milk. That has been a pet peeve of mine. Fresh milk was stopped during the Harper years, and so all the guys, they stopped drinking milk. Can you imagine? You know, sometimes we hear because of costs or because of trade barriers, their farmers are having to you know, throw away their milk. But here in Canada's prisons, you don't have fresh milk for them. It is really egregious. And when it was replaced by powdered milk, and then guys skipped the milk. In addition, the men in other sections had access to some kitchen facilities, and they would work together. Now, you had also asked about the reintegration, how it affects the reintegration. Wouldn't this be just an on-site kitchen would be an amazing way for them to learn to have those skills when they are released from prison? They would eat and they would each contribute, and when they had the kitchen, they would share the meals. It was a communal effort, and so much learning and so therapeutic, I think, for them as well. And the advantages were huge. They looked forward to their meals. They knew what was in them and how they would, enjoy them. And there was no food anxiety. Food can cause a lot of anxiety in people. And so that was eliminated from them. And the opportunities to stay fit and healthy was provided for them. And learning this food prep skills is so essential to every human being. And then there were fewer health issues, but this was all before these kitchens were stopped. And so if we're looking at advocating, and if you're looking at where we should go to improve things, this is one of the ones. And of course, we haven't talked about the prison farms. Very happy to know that they have been brought back. But again, these things do so much to improve an individual's lives by providing skills and knowledge and hands-on experiences. There are numerous documentaries where, things like that have really benefited not only the prisoners, but society at large.
Yeah, thank you for that. I know like the prison farms too have been plagued with a lot of issues, especially with like I don't know if folks may have heard of the ethicalness of like some of their practices that they've been doing and trying to actually get the farms going. And I'm not actually sure where that's at, but maybe I'll turn it over to Ivan for some concluding remarks. And maybe I think someone had asked the same question if the farms were going or whatnot in Kingston.
Yeah, so my comments will certainly sort of reflect those of the other speakers. I think I just want to go back to a decision that was not a sound decision. I think it was driven by it was simply not good policy. So when the Harper government asked the department to offer some money to contribute to that deficit reduction action plan, what correction did was self-serving. They basically protected the level of staffing they had and the salary envelope, and offer to cut everything else. And the farm were one of them. And of course, the food was one of them. And there were lots of other cuts that basically reduced the level of services and programs to incarcerated individuals. Food prior to this Cook Chill and this modernization initiative with the national menu that is basically sets the rate of how much can be spent well, he did actually an internal audit, and I'll talk to that a little bit later, but never to evaluate whether it actually saved money. So I think it saved money, and I think it also removed opportunities for incarcerated individuals to learn new skills in terms of cooking, and cooking and trades, and red seals can actually lead to employment opportunities in the community. And that also has a monetary value, because if you're in the business of rehabilitating individuals, you should provide them with skills that are transferable, that you can actually reintegrate society as a law-abiding citizen. And they took that away from it. So we complained years after year to corrections about the food. They were dealing with in excess of 5,000 complaints a year related to food in the beginning, and eventually incarcerated individual just gave up. And the response that we did receive from Correctional Service of Canada about the quantity and the quality of food was always the same, was that they met the Canada Food Guide requirement. And this was impossible. And 5 years later, they actually did an internal audit, and the audit gave us, supported our findings. There was certainly issues around quality and quantity and food safety, and the audit was actually quite damning. And the service did an action plan, but simply to address those issues, not to reform the system. The other thing that I should mention is that the Canadian Food Guide actually was updated, and it is very different now. And I believe that the cook chill is actually inconsistent with the new Canada Food Guide, which require, for example, protein to be a mixture of not just meat, but also cheeses and nuts and all sorts of things, and that, you know, half your plate should be fruits and vegetables. Correction is so far away from that, and from what I've heard, I believe that OCDC may be even further than that. So the farm were closed. The only farm that was restarted, and it's still not clear what they're going to do, is the one in Kingston, but all the other ones around the country, we forgot about all those. They were not reopened. There are some, you know, obviously some local initiatives that are very positive with the service. They're trying in the summer to grow gardens, so at least for a few weeks out of the year they can get some fresh vegetables. So that's a good thing. And you know, some penitentiaries where wardens have acknowledged that the national menu and the cook chill is not the right way to do, are trying to use other more discretionary funds to complement what is being served. So they're basically circumventing the policy that was so obvious when it first was implemented. Because all the wardens were saying, if we don't circumvent and don't provide more food, we're going to have you know, violence and riots in our penitentiaries. So what else? Because I also one thing I'll add, because somebody asked about this, about, you know, food is so important and it's vital to people's physical and mental health. I agree, and the service has actually put food under the responsibility of corporate services. I think that there's a good case to be made that it should be under the health sector, because I think it is so important to in a correctional setting, that it should be provided. It should be seen as something, you know, it's of course a human rights, but it's also something that contributes to somebody's physical as well as mental health. So I'll leave it to that for now, and if there are questions, I'll be happy to expand.
Thank you. Vanessa, did you want to say any concluding remarks before we get into some Q&As, or?
Sure. I just want to say that it's taken me a long time to have these discussions, not only because I have to like relive what I went through, but because of the judgment I received for being previously incarcerated. And, you know, I saw some comments about, you know, they get treated like they deserve to be fed like that. And I feel like people start to feel like they do deserve the treatment because you're so used to being spoken down to eat garbage, to be sleeping on the floor, to be in dirty living conditions. But you know, most people that are there are incarcerated for being poor, incarcerated for having addictions issues, or incarcerated for having mental health issues, or a combination of all three of those things. There's some people that are there for immigration because I don't know why the capital of Canada doesn't have some kind of immigration detention. They put people who overstay their visa or little minor infractions like that in OCDC. And then there's the people who are falsely accused. And I don't think that anyone in any of those circumstances deserves to be treated like that and to be, you know, fed slop like you're like a pig living in a pig pen. And it really takes such a toll on your mental health, on your physical health. And then you're literally kicked to the curb with a bus ticket, find your way, we don't care what happens to you, and expected to function in society afterwards. And it's completely unrealistic. It doesn't work for anybody. That doesn't rehabilitate anybody. And I really hope that at least in my lifetime, that I see some kind of change in this disgusting system that we have in place right now. That's all.
Thank you. Yeah, very compelling. Totally agree. The system needs to be dismantled and changed completely. Jane, did you want to give some concluding remarks and then we'll open up questions? I think you're on mute.
I just want to say that, and I think I've said it before, that, you know, we have a system that's certainly failing people, you know, and that the government's negligent in their duty of care to incarcerated people. And like, they're just negligent, like they're not doing their job. So how can we as advocates, how can we as family members, as loved ones, you know, people go to jail, like, you know, like people go to jail. So comments like, if you don't like the food, then don't go to jail. It's not that simple. Do you know what I mean? The fact is the jails aren't going away tomorrow. So we need to fix the food in it because people have a right to be fed. And they shouldn't go through more trauma by being hungry, having their food taken from them, and just like the levels of dirt it causes. You know, it's just, I just see it as a big human right that we should really start making a fuss about as advocates. Thanks.
Yeah, totally agree. So maybe we'll just open it up. I'm trying to think, there's been like a lot of comments in the chat. I don't know, do maybe want to do like the hand up function for anybody in the audience that, or if you want to just, maybe raise your hand and then I can just say, go ahead, you can unmute your mic and ask a question to any of the panelists. And I know we're at 8:25, so if folks have to go, we'll keep recording till the end.
Jeffrey, just to let you know, I'm free now until whenever we finished, so I have no more.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so just to let you know.
Thank you, Ivan. That's great. So yeah, I'm not seeing any hands yet. Oh, okay. Leonie, would you like to go first?
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited about the this panel that you've brought together, and it's a good thing to see that everybody's dialoguing. Now the thing is, my son was incarcerated when he was 20, and now he's 28 or going to be 29 soon. In that time, he has developed, health issues because they were saying eating slop. And a lot of it too was when, as a 20-year-old, you're hungry and you're eating at 4:30, and we have tea at 4 o'clock. Like, this is our family thing. But what I'm saying is, I understand that he had to starve, and now he's developed diabetes. and there are other health issues as well. Now, one of the things I want to ask is, if you with the Canada Food Guide, for example, they say you take 10 to 13 servings of fruits and veggies every day. None of us do it, but certainly not the people that are incarcerated. And a simple thing, like for example, my son right now, he's in Bath, where he's in a range where you buy your own food, like you pull your money together and they cook for each other kind of thing. And I asked him the other day, I said, could you get something as simple as onions, garlic, ginger? No, I can't get those things. Those are luxury items. Now, those are staples. Now, say, for example, if someone was sick, I mean, I certainly am getting over a cold and I can take, garlic, ginger and onion and whatever and do a little concoction, you feel better. So even the most basic things, they don't have that. With regard to the farms, I did ask my son about it and he says, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to be there X number of years, like there is a, seniority, so to speak, whether you could be one of those who could even have a little plot to even grow your things. I mean, so that in itself does not help. And right now, in the summer, there's usually lots of fruits and vegetables. You can go, you can get them anywhere. So why can we not go to these places, even the farmers themselves, and buy them directly or facilitate that? Because the thing that we have to do is also to be to get the whatchamacallit, the wardens themselves, put them on the spot, say, okay, this is what it is, have a blueprint, this is what's going to be done, and then you have a time frame, time schedule, because time passes. I don't know whether I'm going to be alive till when he comes out. But my point is, if we all can do this, and like a lot of the women are saying here, and all of you are saying, yes, we've got to get this done. But I think people need to be accountable. There needs to be tracking schedules. There needs to be a whole bunch of things and blueprints, right? Pretty much that's all I have to say. But thank you. This is important.
Well, thank you very much for speaking up and making those comments, because I think, like there needs to be timelines, there needs to be action plans, and these things need to be addressed now, not having these conversations again in 10 years from now. Okay, I will move it. Does anybody want to comment on that, or can we keep going through the others? Yeah. Else, do you want to go next?
Thanks so much. And thanks so much for this panel. It's really fabulous. And I love to see Ivan here because I think, like Leonie just said, we need a place to get traction and actually make change. And I think that Ivan's office is a place that can hold them to account, right? So it's great to see the activists and the OCI working together. I do some research. I used to be a policy person around at John Howard, but I do research now into the experiences of family members of prisoners in Canada. And so I hope I'm not derailing, but I'd love to hear if anybody has any kind of new updates. I know COVID has changed visiting a lot, about what food is like in visiting rooms. I'm not thinking so much about private family visits, but rather just the visits themselves. I've heard such different stories, and a lot of my participants were in the federal system and so had access to, for example, these like warm vending machines where they would get these like quite awful, but still better than bags of chips, like warm hamburgers and warm stuff in a vending machine. I know that in provincial, the visits are sort of too short to involve, and they're behind glass. So we're not talking about eating there, but I'd love to hear about if anybody has any info or insights or opinions about the food offered to, or the cost of, and the availability of, and the quality of food for visitors to prisons.
I'll go. I've had the experience with that.
Probably,
oh my, because typically when you go and visit, so there's the vending machine. Most of the time there would be very little choice. Whatever choice there was, it had already depleted. And there was this disgusting kind of sandwiches. And, I don't eat pork or anything, but invariably the ham sandwich would be left there. And it would just turn me off So if I was there for however many hours I was there, I would starve. I would, even had taken a sandwich before to go in. So that is inedible food where I'm concerned, and there were no juices. There were only colas and ginger ales and very sugary items for drinks. So in a word, there's no thought given to whether we should have healthy choices. And of course, a lot of candy bars and chips. A lot of candy bars and chips in the vending machine, but the food was not of the edible quality where I'm concerned. So
Yeah, I remember like even visiting like at Millhaven, and they had vending machines and it was all just candy and chips, nothing of substance.
It seems that the world has passed them by. It's like they don't listen to the news. It's like they're not aware of research, the effect of these kind of foods. They haven't evolved, it seems, with their thinking. So it's very unfortunate. And so I agree with Vanessa that, and also the other person who spoke, we need action. And I would say I've already communicated with Dr. Zinger about this, that, it used to be that his reports or in the past would go to the parliament, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but there it did get some traction, at least everybody heard, and there was some, and they have to be enforceable. These recommendations have to be enforceable. Otherwise, it's very frustrating to see the day. At one of my speeches, when I was talking to somebody, I had said that, you might as well, Dr. Zinger might as well copy and paste from his last report to the next, So it's unfortunate. And when I read his reports, and we moms, very diligently, we read his reports, and I can detect the frustration and the, that's in those reports. It's, he reiterates things and they don't get done. So this is a huge flaw in the system.
Yeah, fair enough.
Sorry.
No, it's very true. It's like that, arm's length offices, and like there's a lot of good work that goes into like, documenting this, but then exactly no action or like debates or even like, action plans like discussed in Parliament or even within civil servants that are trying to do good work, are trying at least in some sense. Joanne, do you want to ask a question next?
Yeah, just to answer your question, in a federal institution designated for women, during COVID, all the vending machines out of order. They couldn't access the vending machines at all because of COVID securities. So, yeah. And Dr. Zinger, not your fault. I mean, even when the Supreme Court tells CSC to do something, they don't do it. So it's very hard to, segregation by any other name is still segregation. And they had to put out a whole brand new bill and just to keep it the same. So very frustrating. I am a regional coordinator for Ontario and Quebec for a Canadian Association of Elizabeth Fry. I'm also serving a life sentence. I've been out since 2018. I was incarcerated for 8 years, 2 years in maximum. So I know, I get, and I'm so happy that we're talking about food. I've used the Office of Correctional Investigators reports on concerning food when it comes to pay, and how the pay doesn't go any very far because we're compensation. Well, when I say we, I'm talking about the institution designated for women, right? We compensate for groceries with Canteen. Instead of buying my cheese on the grocery, I'll buy it at Canteen, my pasta, so I'd have more than, more to go along. My question is, in this time of inflation and the cost of food going up, we're talking about $6 a day. How big of an impact is that going to have for, example, Joliette, it's, I think, I'm not sure if it's risen, but it was like $35 a week for groceries. And even with that, in let's say 2016, I didn't have enough fruits and vegetables to last my week, right? So in this day and age, when the cost of grocery is getting higher, how is that going to in fact impact what is already a huge deficit when it comes to health? Like I said, I gained 100 pounds within my first 6 months. I ate a lot of Kraft dinner and nachos to compensate for the food and maximum security. Now type 2 diabetes, I have hip problems, knee problems, every type of problems that can be related to weight. And it's also, I mean, impacting healthcare costs, right? So whatever they saved within the institution, they're paying back in healthcare costs with me on the outside, right? So yeah, my question was that, like, how big of an impact is this going to be?
Let me try to answer a few of the comments that certainly resonate with the findings that my office has made over the years around food. It's extraordinary that a system so rich, full of resource like Correctional Services of Canada cannot provide decent meals to its prisoner population. It's extraordinary. It's a situation that is that I can't even wrap my head around. So correction has a huge amount of resource. It's 19,000 employees, but with a budget of $2.5 billion. In terms of where it stands internationally, Canada has the highest ratio between employees versus prisoner. So we have 1.2 employee per prisoner. And that's an extraordinary number. Most European country, the ratio is about 3.5 employees, 3.5 prisoners per employee. So now we have 1 for 1. It's actually exceeding now since the COVID has reduced the prison population. We are 1.2 employees per prisoner. We have something like in excess of 4,000 empty cells in the penitentiary system. Yet there's still some double bunking that happens, which is extraordinary. And 4,000 empty cells represent about 8 penitentiaries. The infrastructure is old. The average age is about 45 years old. And we still have 3 penitentiaries that are over 100 years old. A very well-resourced system, but the salary envelope takes the great bulk of all that, those resources. Just to give you a sense, I travel a lot. I go around various penitentiaries and occasionally speaking engagement and stuff like that. As a public servant or any elected official, Treasury Board tells us that we're entitled to a certain amount of money when we travel for food. So I get in excess of $50 for supper, for dinner. That is more than what an inmate gets for a whole week. So, so that just gives you a sense of so now what we have a system where wardens will be quite clear. They're not cooking for the entire inmate population, because if they did, about 1/3 of the food would be thrown out. So they typically cook for around, anywhere between 70 to 75% of prisoners, because the rest of the population is using their very limited resource in inmate pay or money that is given to them by family to eat anything but the food being provided. So for a rich country like Canada to say that we have a system that's spent in excess of $120,000 per prisoners per year, we don't even have enough to actually ensure that they are appropriately fed. Is ridiculous. Those canteens, which, as I say, are now little IGA, and you can buy a lot of food there to either complement or replace the diet that correction is giving you. And there are some inmates that are no longer eating any of the food. Is also part of the problem, is that, a lot of it is processed food, which is not necessarily very good for you. They do, I've seen potatoes. I did see some in some penitentiary, depends which penitentiaries. You can have some cooking oil, and you can have a few things, but the rest is largely processed food, which is not necessarily good for you. And then can increase the cost related to healthcare, which is also paid by the federal government. So just to let you know, everything that you're saying resonates, and it's certainly consistent with the observations we've made over the years with my office. And we will continue, despite the frustration, we will continue to do the work we need to do.
Exactly. It's very good work. Jennifer, did you want to go next with a question? And thanks for answering that, Ivan.
Well, Ivan really spoke to a lot of what I'm concerned about. And I do think it sounds like advocacy, because I'm old enough to remember, as Jane said, it wasn't that bad, but it wasn't great, but it wasn't that bad. And there were actually people sometimes who would come and study some of the correctional initiatives we had. And so if Harper is long gone now, how come we haven't undone some of the damage that he did? I mean, he's left that behind. And I think it is up to us to raise our hands. The one thing I would ask, Nadine had said something about human rights, and maybe Ivan could answer this, because I remember when I moved from the Northwest Territories to Saskatchewan, I was the director of a halfway house in a series of addiction treatment centers. And I just lobbied to get the right to have country meat served, cooked and served. And at first it was an absolute no. And I just lobbied. And as soon as I mentioned human rights and the indigenous, the UN indigenous rights, people, this was a territorial thing, even though it was a federal facility, but they were starting, they were trying to say, no, it's not been inspected. I said, if it was shot by a hunter and donated to us and they vouch for the meat, it's inspected under, traditional knowledge. And they actually accepted that. And so we were able to bring in country meat. And the reason that it is a human rights issue is because there is also, along with the Canada Food Guide, there is an Indigenous food guide. And because there is often a different sense of medical needs, and without getting into all of it, people need to eat meat. And if you give a lot of carbohydrates, it's true with a lot of people. If you give too much carbohydrates, obviously there's medical conditions that happen. So it is a human rights issue as much as it is a mental health issue, and all of that. And I just wonder what happens when you bring that up at the federal level, because I was actually surprised that they let us bring our own food in and cook it just because we pushed.
Does anybody want to comment on that? Or do we want to keep going with the questions? Maybe we can also follow up, speakers can follow up with these questions.
Jennifer, I agree with you. It is a human rights issue, definitely. Sometime it transcends. They're no longer. It's no longer just an issue related to health and mental health. It can be actually makes the next jump, which is to human rights, a human rights issue, and should be treated as such. We are, it's been mentioned a few times that our office documents things, and correction tends sometimes to ignore our recommendations. What I can tell you is that the courts and various stakeholders sometimes take those documents and then use them to actually succeed in moving things along. So, for example, this week you may have read something about dry cells, conditions of dry cells. So this is kind of recommendations that we documented that eventually some lawyers have taken to court, and now new legislation will have to be drafted. Yesterday, there was the Canadian Human Rights Commission that decided to assist the Canadian Elizabeth Fry of Canada to try to if they don't listen to us right away, eventually either by the courts or inquiries or commissions end up affecting changes that we've been documenting before.
Right. Yeah, that's great. Ingrid, did you want to go next?
Thank you. Yes, my question, Ingrid and I are together on this call. My question is to Ivan. I understand that there are some federal penitentiaries that are too far away from cook and chill.
More than, I think, 2 hours drive.
More than 2 hours drive. Can you tell us what sort of percentage of the federal prisons are in that sort of situation?
4 hours.
4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's further than 4 hours from a cook and chill, then they cook their own local food.
Yes, so you're correct. It's not every penitentiaries that has cooked chill. So the best example is the one that I've shown you pictures of, which is Port-Cartier, very remote. But they must comply with the national menu, and the national menu dictates how much they can spend per inmates per day. And that's part of the problem. So cook chill, I think, makes certainly the food less appealing. And I think because everything is boiled for an hour and a half to 2 hours, I think it probably removes some of the vitamins and the benefits of the food, the nutrients. So they don't have that same problem in other penitentiaries where they will cook the food themselves. There's less likelihood that they would use that kind of approach to cooking. Yeah. But the problem is with the national menu, which imposes to every penitentiary a dollar value on how much can be spent.
Okay. Thank you for that. Katrina, would you like to go? This will be the last question for tonight.
Hi, thanks. So my name's Katrina, and I just wanted to sort of put a little perspective in as well. I put my hand up and put it down a couple of times, but I really feel like it's important that I share what. So I was incarcerated also at OCDC. I was released at January 21. So I was there for 4 months and out of October until January 2021. And during that time, we spent a lot of time in cells because like with COVID, you're on quarantine for a while. And I just want to say for cells, it was worse for food wise because the portions are already too small. Most of them are inedible. There's so many carbs and so little fresh, nutritious food that I did gain a lot of weight. This is in provincial. And they give you 2 pieces of bread with every, with your meal. And so I used to rip off the crust of the bread and save it for a snack for later. When I got hungry, because I knew that there was no, there was not going to be anything in between. Like you starved. That's what happened. And when what you were given could make you either have the, I want to say it in a polite way, to go to the bathroom like that, or to not be able to go to the bathroom at all. So if you can't go to the bathroom and you have intestinal issues like that, you can get prune juice from the doctor if you get a prescription, but then you've got to be able to see the doctor for that. And if you get a prescription for prune juice, to be able to use that, because the food you're eating is so, like, makes it so you can't use the bathroom, that's like a huge deal in there. I really wanted to mention that to see, this is my first time participating in something like this. It's taken a long time, and I kept journals and kept records and stuff because I knew one day I would want to see other people who are advocating, to hear mothers who want to speak for their children. There's so many of us that are inside, and good people still, really good, bad, it really doesn't matter. It's a human rights thing. It's human beings, like, but to hear this is so heartwarming, because there's a lot of people in there that don't have anyone at all. And there were times when I was inside there, and when I was in OCDC in South, and I literally felt like they could throw me in the incinerator and nobody would know. And that's how it feels when you're in there. Your rights are like, there's no rights. So when it comes to just being able to eat, there's in at least in Innis, we didn't get a snack at nighttime. Sometimes there was extra bread, but if there was if the dorms were full, there was 2 pieces of bread per meal, and then most of the meals were inedible. So thank you so much, everyone. And this has been such a great thing for me to be able to have been a part of. And have a nice night.
Thank you for speaking up. That was very wonderful to hear. Thank you. Brave.
Very brave. And we really appreciate everybody's comments tonight. And thank you for putting up with me as your moderator. Yeah, it's been I've just learned so much, and it's going to take, I think, some time for everybody here to decompress after tonight's discussion. But I just want to say thank you so much. Not only from the bottom of my heart, but also like everybody here, all the panelists, and yeah, Books to Prisoners wants to like continue this conversation and do some other advocacy pieces after this. So I will turn it back over to Rooksy, who's planned this whole thing. She's a placement student doing social work at Carleton, and we just like we're so happy that she helped us get this this event off the ground. So thank you, Rooksy, and over to you for the final draw.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's honestly been such an honor to hear from everybody and see everybody's presence here. I'm also so grateful for those who shared their personal experiences. I would like to put in the chat some contact information from Books to Prisoners. So I will put in the Instagram, the Facebook, and the email, which you can reach us at. We did a draw for $50 at Octopus Books, which is located in Ottawa. So we used a random number generator, and the winner is Kit. So if possible, if Kit is here, yay, perhaps just send me a private, Kit is in the chat, yay. Perhaps just send me a private message on Zoom with your email address or contact info, and we'll get in touch with you. But again, thank you so much, everybody, for coming here today. And thank you to our panelists, Farhat, Ivan, Vanessa, and Jane, for speaking. And again, I wish you all a great night.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Good
Thank
night.
you, everybody.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Jane, Rooksy, do you guys want to stay on for a few minutes just after? Yeah, okay.